So this session is called AI IRL. So we're trying to see how is AI coming in and impacting your real life. I work in AI policy right now, but I used to be a computer engineer, technically still a computer engineer, and I was actually coding AI for pretty big companies. And then I was worried about the safety of it. So I started looking into the policy and realized that there was a lot of dangers that came with AI, but there wasn't necessarily many people looking at how we can prevent that or how we can make it the most beneficial for the most amount of people rather than the richest few. So, yes, this workshop is for anyone who interacts online, which is pretty much everyone nowadays, particularly for marginalized youth, to see how AI might impact you differently, and then how you can navigate online. We're going to talk about how AI works, how it impacts, and then how we can respond. And I also want this to be a place where you can ask the questions that you might have had about AI. Welcome. So questions are totally welcome. How we're going to facilitate that is you can raise your hand in the Zoom call, and then Sarah will be able to unmute you for asking a question. You can also throw any questions in the chat, and then I'll see that pop up, and we'll be able to answer that. We're going to be using a function called Mentimeter. So if you can scan this QR code now, you'll also be able to see the code later if the QR code is not the easier way to do it. And that will be a place where you can respond to questions. We can make it interactive. And you can either be a part of the conversation or you don't have to be. If you're here to learn, then that's totally okay too. So, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to start with what is AI. We're going to get into what it is in plain language, and then we're going to see how it actually is showing up in our lives every day. A lot of places you probably know, and then there's some that you might not realize you're interacting with AI. We're going to talk about some of the dangers or risks of AI, which includes bias and oppression, how the algorithm shapes what you see, and how AI can be used for surveillance, and how you can use that to then be safer online. We're then going to do two activities. One where you're looking at the AI that interacts in your life and how that impacts you. And then we're going to be doing a little bit of a dreaming up of liberatory tech, which if AI and tech was implemented in a way that it was to serve everybody, how would that look? So let's start with what is AI? So we know that it means artificial intelligence, but beyond that, I'm sure that you have some ideas. I'm going to switch to the Mentimeter here. So if you see either the code at the top of the screen there, or you're able to use that QR code that was on the last one. You can go to menti.com and then put this code in. Actually, I think I can send it in the chat as well. Perfect. So once you answer, your answers will start to pop up here, and you can say anything you want. It's you don't have to attach your name to it. We're just trying to see what do you think AI is? What have you heard about it? Have you heard of places you've seen it? Have you heard of ways that it might be good or bad? Maybe it's all-seeing being that will take over the world one day, or whatever you think, you can put it in there, and we'll review some of the answers. Okay, we're seeing bots that summarize common discourse in the internet. Pattern recognition tool, identifying faces, how people walk. Large language models, algorithmically collected and reproduced. So we're seeing some similar answers, but some are completely different. A technological advancement that's programmed by human with biases on systemic norms. Some people have a good education on the dangers of AI already. And information summary. See, every single answer here is right. AI is all of these things at once. Harmful to our climate, that's true for sure. Wonderful. So we'll go back to the workshop here. I think of AI as a huge concept. It's like transportation. So you have cars and you have boats and you have planes, and you wouldn't really consider them the same thing. They're all doing something very different. You could even have like walking or rolling down a hill or something completely out of left field that is less common. It's still considered transportation. It's a way of getting around. So that is similar with artificial intelligence. It is the concept that encompasses all of these different algorithms that learn off of data. So it includes systems that help computers learn from the data, and they would do tasks that humans would normally do. So AI can drive decisions, it can learn patterns. Some of it can deliver content, which we saw there. That's what we saw with ChatGPT and the large language models. So those are considered generative AI. And some will just sit there and watch and track, and we don't even see what's happening with it. So AI can be the one that's creating something. It can be the one that is deciding what gets shown. And then a lot of times it's deep in the back end and it's not something that you're seeing at all. And it's some algorithm that takes a bunch of data and then will learn a pattern and then replicate that pattern to make predictions in the future. So many different types of AI, and they all fall under this artificial intelligence umbrella, but they all do different things. So we can look at some specific. Where does AI show up in your life? So we'll go back to the Mentimeter here, and we'll do the same where you can say where AI shows up. Keep it to like one or two words. The words will populate here. Sorry, the screen share. The words will populate here and create a cloud of words. So keep it short. Like we know AI exists in TikTok or in social media would be a good answer as well. We've seen it on facial recognition is a good example. And then where else have you seen AI show up in your life? Retail bots, that's yeah. TTC. Actually, in the law school, we just did a project using AI for the TTC to help people follow the law. Feels like everywhere. Yes. Google searches, school learning, email. Yep. And nowadays, things show up way more than before because we didn't have large language models. So, in cases like you're saying a Google search, that would be a place that AI was showing up long before large language models existed. AI would be there to determine who should be seeing what, to determine what links should be at the top of the results. And then now we see AI being used in an even bigger way, where it is showing the summarized content of all the Google searches at the top of your Google search. And same with email. It was in your email before to show you reminders of what you might have missed or to look at your emails and to add your events to your calendar automatically. But now we can do rewriting the email within the Apple email itself. With scams as well, that's important. So we can see that it is feels like everywhere. Okay, so some more examples that we can go through. TikTok. I would love for people to respond verbally if you want to. If not, then we can just go through it and I'll just explain. But if people have examples of where they would see AI in TikTok, that would be great. You can put it in the chat or you can respond. Yes. Deep fakes, fake reality, definitely. And these are some of the places that you might see AI and TikTok that are a little more scary with deep fakes. But the biggest reason that everyone uses TikTok is because the algorithm, and the algorithm is AI. So it's learning off of all of your data points, and it's determining what should you be seeing on your TikTok feed. That's a really big one. We also see filters. Filters appear on TikTok. They appear on now many things. It was very Snapchat heavy, and then now you can do filters on most things. Even photo editing. I saw a photo editing app. It would have AI to see where's your face and then to replicate the different filters on the faces. Online shopping. That was one of the examples we got earlier. So it is showing what you see and what you don't see. And there are even cases where AI is used to update pricing so that people are getting different pricing based on what they might or might not spend. More so in things like flights and vacation, but online shopping sometimes. We also have streaming. So this would be on Twitch or on any sort of streaming platform. And a lot of AI goes into these streaming platforms for copyright protection, for determining if there's been any sort of harassment or bullying. We see AI all the time. ChatGPT, that's just one example of a large language model, which most people are interacting with now. And only 4 years ago, that seemed very, very far in the future. And then electric cars. So we see electric cars coming and even self-driving cars, and they are completely reliant on AI to determine where they are in the environment and to see where they should be going and to keep people safe as well. Now we're going to get into one of the biggest ways that AI affects us, and that is through visibility. So AI will decide what shows up in our feeds and what gets flagged and what gets ignored. It controls what stories are seen, whose voices are boosted, and who gets silenced. And this is often without any of us even realizing it. So when this is happening to marginalized people, it's not just frustrating or annoying, it's actually dangerous. So we're going to talk about now the decisions that are made and why they matter. So, how AI shapes what we see and what we don't see. AI acts like an invisible editor. It will be deciding what shows up at the very top, what's determined to be important, and also what gets buried. So algorithms choose what content gets boosted and also what content gets fully removed. So this can determine what types of creators get boosted up and are shown to more people to increase following, and what types of creators are pushed to the side and not shown in people's feeds. This could be anything from posts in your feeds to the ads that you're seeing to search results. And it can even be the auto moderation tools where posts are getting fully removed or people are not being shown in different results. So the key thing to remember here when thinking about how AI shapes what we see and what we don't is that AI does not understand fairness. It is only going to be copying patterns. So if it's basically learning off of biased data and biased patterns from the past, then the algorithm is going to repeat that bias automatically. So the risks of a personalized feed. It sounds great. Like AI would be able to show you online everything you want to see based on your thousands and thousands of data points. But it doesn't just decide what's relevant, it also shapes how we are able to see ourselves and others. The personalized feed can feel amazing when you're seeing content that's affirming, validating. You said something around your phone, and then it pops up a couple minutes later, and you perfect. I was looking for this anyways. But it can also misread us. It can make assumptions, and it can overexpose parts of our identities that do not need to be overexposed. So this exposure can feel unsafe, especially if you're part of a marginalized group. AI can show people content that is triggering or inaccurate, or it makes you feel like you don't belong. And this isn't the general content that is being shown. This is what you're seeing. And even though it feels like it's personal, it's not doing anything to help. It's putting in front of us what we will look at more, which can even lead to things that are more of a shock value, being viewed more and more, and then being put on more people's feeds, which does reduce the amount of good that we're seeing and can put us at more risk. So when the algorithm silences people, one of the most harmful things that it can do is when that happens quietly and without explanation, and more so when it happens and people aren't aware that it's happening. This is what we call shadow banning. So people say shadow banning, but this is a genuine thing. And it's where your content gets hidden or deprioritized. And a lot of the times you're not told about it. So this can happen to bigger creators and sometimes smaller creators as well. But this would change what people are seeing, and it happens more often to people who are queer, trans, and BIPOC. This is because talking about identity, the resistance, and what is generally the truth is not necessarily taken in by the algorithm and seen as good. And this is because of patterns. It's because of what people are looking at. It's not because AI has a moral compass. But you have to remember that what you're being shown is related to what the algorithm sees about you. So echo chambers are another issue. And this happens when the algorithm learns about you and then only shows content that matches what you've seen before. So it would exacerbate any views that people might have. It might bring people down a rabbit hole about things that they shouldn't be seeing over and over. This can happen when people are interested in gambling. And now you're seeing only gambling ads and gambling videos and other things like that, where it's not necessarily a good thing that you want to continue to be seeing. This means that we keep getting the same voices, the same stories, and the same bodies, and everybody else disappears. And this can also occur in political natured things where people get into a viewpoint and then they continue to see things based exclusively on that viewpoint, and it makes changing minds very difficult. So this isn't random, and these systems are built to repeat what they've seen. So just to hammer it in, if what they've seen is biased, then that is what they will show back. Moving on to bias in algorithms. We're not talking about in the code. It's not in the people. It's not even in the people that are creating the algorithms. It's not in the software engineers. And that's the part that I found really scary when I was in software engineering, was that it isn't in your control if something will be biased or not, if you don't actively make it unbiased, which is very, very difficult, and it's not focused a lot in tech. So AI, again, is not neutral. It's reflecting the systems around us that already exist in the world. It's embedded in the data. So these systems are coded into technology, and then they scale and they harm fast and they harm quietly. So unlike out, outward racism that we can see, it happens behind the scenes where it's repeating patterns, and it gives people, decision makers, and in the algorithm where it's making the decision without a human in the loop, it gives them a way to say that it wasn't under their decision, and to say that the algorithm knows best and decided for reasons that are unknown. And this is not going to cut it when it comes to bias and when it comes to upholding these systems of oppression. So here are some real examples of what happens when bias gets built into AI. There are trans folks that get misgendered by moderation bots. There's facial recognition, which regularly misidentifies or completely misses Black faces, particularly Black women. There's been revolution on this, but this was one of the first stories of bias in algorithms, was about the first publicly available facial recognition model, where it was made by many white men in a lab, and they just used their own photos to be able to train the model. It was about not having different types of people in the group and in the room when decisions are made, and ignorance allowing this bias to get through. And that was the most widely used facial recognition model for many years, until a female Black researcher at MIT did her research showing and proving that the algorithms were biased. So they're getting better now. But we have queer and BIPOC posts that are being taken down more often, even when they are joyful or educational, because people would react in a certain way if they are misinformed or not good people. And we also have where there's hiring AI that is doing screening of resumes and blocking people that have longer or more complicated names, which would then be biased towards people of different cultures, and also putting women in a different category when doing job screening. We have AI art tools, which will have preference for lighter features, and will take whiteness and maleness as the default. So things are developing as more and more research and more light is shown, and things should only get better, but in the moment, there is still this embedded bias. So the main message here is that algorithms are not neutral. They reflect the systems that built them. I'm just trying to see if there's any chat. Yeah, it's AI where your phones are just always listening, and that is one that not many people fully understand, actually. It's very interesting. But yeah, that's the exact Joy Bouliami. She's one of the most amazing AI researchers out there and is really changing things. That's exactly it. Awesome. So AI learns from a biased world. I think I've drilled this message in enough here. It doesn't just learn from data, it learns from patterns. And patterns in our world come from a place that is shaped and has been shaped by racism, transphobia, misogyny, fat phobia, and anti-Indigenous bias. And this is something that gets copied and then reproduces those patterns at scale, in secret, and often without anyone even feeling like they need to check. People have some inherent trust in computers, which I've never really understood. And there actually was just a study released that said 80% of users fully trust ChatGPT. And the founder of OpenAI came out and said, I don't know why people trust it. So even the people developing these models are saying they're wrong, they're biased, and they hallucinate entirely. And we still have people trusting computers more than they might trust people. The next risk we're going to look at is one of the other most serious ways that AI shows up in our life, and that is surveillance. So these tools aren't only shaping what we're seeing, they're also tracking us, monitoring us, and making judgments on us. Not moral judgments, but data judgments. And this impact is definitely not felt equally across communities. So surveillance in this case would be the being tracked, recorded, and monitored. And this is related to the phone's just listening. That's a big part of it as well. But we also have AI being used in cameras to scan for faces in public and label people that could be suspicious, to predict crime, to monitor students. And all of these things have a very high capacity to produce biased results. So if something is learned in the past, it could be for whatever reason with what's in the data, or it could be because of human intervention that is biased. But in places where people's livelihoods and people's justice are at stake, such as at an airport or used in policing, this is something that is very high stakes. So these systems are all meant to induce safety for people, but they don't actually bring an equal amount of safety for all types of people. So again, surveillance does not impact everybody the same. It's important to name this, and it is everywhere. It's very unavoidable at this point. You're probably having AI models tracking what you're doing, where you're going, and even if nobody is necessarily looking at those directly, there are cases where they can produce biased outcomes. So this is what we were saying about it not being neutral. It's not treating everybody the same. And I want people to think about, where is AI being used to watch people in your world? And maybe where have you interacted with AI? Just think on that yourselves. We don't need to do the Mentimeter. Or actually, let me see. Let's do the Mentimeter. Where do you think that AI is being used to watch people in your world? So a good example would be the phones are just listening. Maybe if you have an Alexa, you know that the Alexa is always listening. And with Siri set up, advertisement, the borders, yes. And the borders are being very upfront about that, which is good. But they're being upfront about the use of AI. They're not being upfront about potential risks. The conversation has shifted recently, where people are very excited. They're excited about more innovation. They're bringing big plans for AI within different countries, but not considering the dangers and the risks. So the borders are advertising that they're doing facial recognition, uh, and they're not necessarily talking about how this could be biased or how this could negatively impact people of marginalized groups a lot more. And this is something we see at airports already. We see people of marginalized groups being targeted and taken into secondary and things like that when that's because of bias reasons. And then we have now AI doing it where it's a lot harder to point to the bias because it's not someone visually judging. Satellites, yep. Self-checkout, that's a fun one actually, because it is very high propensity for bias. I don't think they're using the theft detection, especially in Canada, but that is around the world, and that is a very large place. Public transit as well. Yeah, at the pilot stations, this is part of the AI for the law that some part of my school is working on. And this is something that they had to consider doing these projects was how might these systems produce bias? How might they surveil people differently? And how can this surveillance be done to uphold people's privacy and their human rights? Your phone, the ring cam, you don't know what that one's doing. It's always watching though. Perfect. So these places where the surveillance is not neutral can lead to things like overpolicing, and they can exacerbate issues of overpolicing that already existed before these AI models were introduced. We have misidentification, and this tends to only happen to um, marginalized groups or people of color, which is something that was working towards the opposite, and then introduction of AI will exacerbate those issues. And we also have a loss of privacy and safety. So a lot of this tech is there to help people, and it's there to make things more safe and to protect people. But there's not enough of a focus on where is this helping people and where is it harming people. So where's the harm? We're going to bring everything together. And we have the three main harms that AI can introduce in people's lives, which are even more there for marginalized groups. So the first one would be that AI controls what we see and what stays hidden. The second one is repeat bias in decisions, filters, and feeds. And then the third one is the surveillance without consent or accountability. And the bias infiltrates the other two as well. So we want to ask ourselves questions like, who is this tech protecting? Who is it maybe punishing or excluding? And who's really deciding this? And do people have autonomy? So the next Mentimeter is a multiple choice where which of these harms feels most real or most dangerous or maybe shocked you the most? I agree with all, but it's interesting that some things people wouldn't know are necessarily happening. Um, where you can see that the control of your feed that has 0 votes right now is something that people are pretty aware of. They knew that Netflix was recommending the movies that they think you want to see, and they know that the phone's listening and trying to show you what you're talking about, what you're interested in. But they might not be aware of the bias or the over surveilling that's happening with AI. I'm just checking the chat. Yeah. Yeah, Gashi, great question. Absolutely true. And this is something that potentially could be coming from algorithms that are giving people more of what they're trying to see. And that's what you would prefer is that the algorithm is learning based on data and it does not have any moral compass. So it's learning that certain people that aren't wanting to see that, they're going to report that. And then reports are coming. So it would learn from that data, which would definitely bury pro-Palestinian posts. And this can also happen because the people that are in charge at different tech companies can infiltrate the algorithm themselves. We saw this specifically with Elon Musk putting if tweet is by, or sorry, if X post is by Elon Musk, put it at the top of the feed. So they go in and hard code that kind of thing sometimes. I cannot answer if that's being done or if that's not being done, but it definitely is happening where uh, posts of that nature are getting shadow banned, and that could be because of an active um, changing code or not. Yeah, research is using AI to predict crime, and a lot of that time it is based a lot on postal code and based a lot on type of name or how long you've been in the country. And a lot of these things are absolutely um, adding room for bias, where maybe a crime is more likely to occur within a certain postal code because more crime occurs there. But that does not mean that you can say that this new person from that postal code will commit a crime because you're perpetuating the bias that comes from a stereotype onto other people and using like prejudice, but then actually impacting their life with like the police. And we know how much that can impact people. Yeah. Okay, so I would love to ask if there are any questions right now, you can put them in the chat. We're going to move on to our two different activities. So this is all the info, and you're going to use this info to have some discussions on the next two activities. But if you have any questions right now, what is AI? Are certain things you've seen AI about any of the risks we've talked about? Then I would love to answer them now. Anything you've been wondering about AI, either raise your hand and then Sarah can unmute you, or you can put it in the chat um, at any time. I can explain the next. The exercise. Well, people might put a question if you have any. No pressure. You can also message me personally. I can respond so your name's not there if that's what you're worried about. Yeah, sorry if anyone missed the question that Gashi asked was about the like shadow banning of pro-Palestinian posts and voices on social media. Exactly. So police will over police places. Sorry, Sarah just said that AI also relies on racist data that the police have collected, which is absolutely true. And maybe it's not just the police collected it and they put it down racist. Maybe the police are racist and they've been over policing areas as like themselves, not as AI. And now those areas have way more arrests when that wasn't necessarily the case, the true case of how crime has been committed. So basically, all these issues exist. Like these issues of racism in policing and other things like that absolutely existed. And AI gives a way that this can be exacerbated based on the data. But it also gives kind of a cover to these decisions where it gives people an outlet to be like, oh, man, it wasn't my decision. It's the AI did that. But if we're here asking the right questions, and as you grow up and you interact with AI, and as it becomes more popular, more part of embedded in everyone's life than it is now, that will give you the opportunity to ask those questions. Can we unmute Gashi?
Hi. Sorry, I'm commuting, so it might be noisy, but thank you so much. This is super helpful and like super informative. I've been thinking a lot about like data collection and consolidation, and I recently saw this police report about hate crime statistics and the like obviously there's bias in how you report data, but
Mhm.
I wonder maybe how even in like our day-to-day lives, AI is integrated into that.
Yeah, with the recording of data. So it's very interesting and a very hard problem on the tech side of things. Data is just being recorded always. Now that we have so much like database and ability like cloud and things like that, they're tracking everything that you can think of. And then what they're doing is they're training the model and they're using different importance of different data to say, like, oh, this data point is really important. But a lot of the times it's an algorithm that's determining that as well. So just because all this data is collected, the more you use to train, the more it costs to train the model, like more hard it is, the more computer power you need. So if they can use less data to train the model and get good results, then they'll do that. But that can lead to data that might be able to mitigate this bias being taken out. Or it could lead to maybe they're removing this point of contention. Like there was a big study done actually where if you take out the data point that people are women, and it was on a credit um, scoring where they would determine if you were eligible for a loan. If they took the data point that you're a woman out, it actually became more biased because all of your data is impacted by your identity, right? Like where you live and where you grew up and where you went to school, and all this is impacted by who you are. So taking the fact that you're a woman out doesn't change all the other impacts you had because you're a woman, and that goes for any marginalized group. So the data can be collected in full and then manipulated in a way that provides a better, more accurate model. But the model is more accurate because like you're basing it off certain data that has these biases. So to remove that, you actually have to intentionally go and test the outcomes and test them based on these data points of marginalization, and then be able to determine that it is or isn't biased. But it's one of the hardest problems, and there's not a lot of people looking at it right now because everything is about innovation. Everybody at Google is trying to create the next ChatGPT with Bard or whatever it is. And my two favorite AI researchers got fired or quit from Google because they were trying to do this. So yes, it does sound like we are effed, but there are really, really, really good people working on it. They're just not at these big tech companies right now. They're on the edge, and some of the smartest people in AI are on the other side now, screaming back at all the people they used to work with. So that's something to think. And I'm here doing it as well. I was an engineer, and now I'm trying to work on making AI better. So the best you can do is be aware of how you're interacting with it and know that it can be biased and know that you can ask those questions. Perfect. So we can move on to the next activity. The first activity will be decoding the algorithm. So this will be about taking something familiar that you use very often and pulling back the curtain and seeing what AI is actually doing behind it. So I want you to decode how it works, who it serves, and who it harms. I'm thinking, Sarah, if we can break into groups for this, I'll put this screen out so you can see that this is what we'll be doing here. We're going to pick an app or anything that you use that you think has AI. Like we saw some like Ring camera is an interesting one, or Siri, things like that. And then look at what is the app doing? What parts of AI is it recommending, making decisions? Is it moderating or monitoring you? And then who benefits from this, or maybe who doesn't? Who gets harmed and erased? And then what would you change? So we're going to break into groups. If you don't want to speak in the group, just chat in your group. But I think four or five groups, four groups. Okay. So now we're asking, what did this AI do and who is it serving? So these are the questions that we were asking for that. Did it do anything badly or unfairly? And what would you change? So I'd love to hear what apps people were talking about and if they got any good discussion or thinking about it if you were muted. I know there was some chat happening, but while people are thinking there, one good thing that came up was about AI therapy, and that's a really good example of a way that AI can be used to increase accessibility to people and get people resources that they might not have had otherwise. Therapy is really expensive, and it's hard to reach sometimes. But it's also an example of a really, really dangerous place that AI is used, where it has a lot of room to cause harm and implement bias. This can happen with the AI dating as well, I think was brought up, which is something very funny to think about, but it's also something that could cause um, a lot of danger. So, does anybody want to share about what their group discussed? Find the Zoom.
Okay.
Minnie, can we unmute?
Oh, who needs to be unmuted?
Minnie had her hand up, I'm not sure, but somebody said that they can't.
Yeah. Okay. I have asked to mute Minnie.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I think we didn't do much discussion in regards to who the algorithms is serving, because I think just the general consensus that it's obvious that it's not really serving people in general, and more so like the overlords. But I think one example of like what would you change if it was built for you and your people, or like a way to counteract it is just like resistance built through joy, or the things that humans are supposed to do, which is just art making, community building, and having fun. But on top of that, continuing to be the AI that is supposed to be the example of AI. So an example would be like critical thinking skills, fact checking, making sure you share the resources that you yourself has been using and is trusted with your friends,
Mhm.
building relationships, and on top of that, just continuing to read and build our cognitive skills that we developed in maybe school or like in our communities, and to not just forget about that. On top of that, too, I think one thing as well is that these tech systems creates short-term memory, or like short-term societal memory. So like continuing to understand our histories and don't forget what happened in, the 2000s or 2010s, especially with like 9/11 and how all tech started like gaining traction um, in regards to like Islamophobia and like the no-fly lists. So those things are um, all forgotten, or mostly forgotten in collective memory, and to just continue reminding next generations or people who are unaware that these things have always been repeating throughout history.
That's so important to both of things you said. I agree entirely. I think keeping up with the tasks that AI replaces and doing things for like the good of your development, continuing to do art, continuing to write, yeah, not having like the cognitive decline of relying on a model to do all of your thinking for you is really important. And then, yeah, keeping up, remembering history. And I think another portion that is important is remembering like accurate history and not allowing AI to overwrite history in a way, or not have people trust what's out there. So having a good true source of history and making sure we're not forgetting that. But honestly, everyone's forgetting it always. We see history repeat itself over and over. But being the people that know what you need to say, what questions to ask is really important, whatever field you end up going into, because AI will be in every field and it will be introducing bias. Like you could be going into healthcare, you could becoming a doctor. And once you're there, you'll see that there's AI medical imaging, right? So to detect any sort of disease on the skin or on uh, x-rays. And a lot of times this data, and like even as like doctors themselves, like not just like the data we've trained, are super bad at diagnosing these things on darker skin tones because the textbooks only had light skin tones. So that's something that just existed in the world. And then there's been work, which we're not even closely there yet, but work to then educate on how does this look on every skin tone, and that's built into medical school, and there's ethics class. And now we're getting an AI to do it that didn't learn all the ethics and didn't learn the difference. So there needs to be people working in medical AI and people working in medical field that have the knowledge to know it can be biased so they know what to look for. And then that goes for everything. Does anybody else want to share their discussion? We can think about different apps and yeah, how they help people, but I think it's interesting to think that most implementation of AI nowadays is for increased innovation and increased profit in the end is how it is. And that is like the certain big tech companies really pushing that forward. Yeah, more transparency and user agency, roll out features via opt-in options for users. This is so true. And I think it should be a level of responsibility for these large tech companies, especially producing publicly available large language models, that they are like have the onus to educate you. This isn't the case. I think it should be on what the tech's doing, what you should know before you start using it, how it can be wrong. Like they have a little fine print that's like check all your results, but like it needs to be big red bold writing when it pops up. And there's even like a little toggle in ChatGPT if you go deep into the settings and it's automatically on and you can toggle it off that says don't use my data and my chats to train the future chats. Do I believe that they do not use your data if you toggle that thing off? I'm not going to confidently say that. But I do know that they definitely use your data if you don't toggle it off. So this is something that exists in different AI models, but it's not at the forefront and it's not something that is really getting taught and people are getting taught out there. So hopefully eventually that's mandatory and hopefully it's taught in school as well to what to look out for. Okay, let's move on to the next, which is the second activity. We'll do dreaming up liberatory tech. So now that we've broken down what AI is doing right now, let's imagine what it could be doing instead. So we want to flip the script and ask if the AI was built with the care, consent, and the community needs in mind, then what would it be doing? What if it actually protected us instead of policing and surveillance of us? So we'll do the breakout rooms again, but can we unmute everyone? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I'll just go to individual ones and then
Okay, perfect. So this activity will be imagine an app, tool, or system that understands your community, keeps people safe, and then ask yourself, what does it look like? What does it do? This can be something that would help your community or an app that exists already, just built in a better way. But just get talking about how would things look if they were built for us? Good. So to recap everything that we've learned, we learned that AI is everywhere. It shows up in our feeds. It decides what shows up in our feeds, in our filters, and in choices that are made. It is absolutely not neutral, and it's not immoral. Or sorry, it's not moral. It is copying bias and causing real harm based on past data. And a lot of the times, it's not even explainable. It doesn't know that it's doing that, but it still perpetuates the data. Next is that you do not need to code or be in tech to notice, question, or resist these problems. I feel like people think AI is over my head. It's hard and tech, I don't know how to code. You do not need to know any of that or be in that field to be able to ask those questions and to be able to bring things forward in your own field, wherever that ends up being. And the last is that we can imagine a world and demand tech where it's working for us and not directly against us. So keep learning. I have a youth-friendly AI glossary and I also have a resource guide. I'll send to Sarah, I think, and then we can share out it. You can't put it in the chat, so the cat's killing me. But I think that will be good. And then you'll have access to that. And then a resource guide too, if you want to learn more about these issues in AI, learn more about the good things that are happening, because there are a lot of groups that are doing really, really good things that I have in this resource guide, that will show you that like there are people out there looking for places where algorithms are biased in the world right now. There are people that are trying to build the tech that is liberatory for all groups and marginalized people. So that resource guide hopefully make you feel a little better. But all in all, stay curious, protect each other, and keep asking questions about how these systems are holding anybody down and how we can fix that. That's
Um,
all. Yeah.
did you email it to me? I'm just gonna put it in the chat.
Oh, okay. I didn't email. I have it, but I didn't think you could put it in the chat.
Right. There's like a little, if you go to the chat, there's a file icon next to the emoji.
Oh, I don't have that. I can email it to you though.
I'll just send it in the chat so you can,
Okay.
and
If anyone wants to connect to me on LinkedIn and ask more questions, I'll leave that up while I go email.
and I've also pasted the survey. So if you could please fill that out, it'll be very helpful to us to continue to bring this kind of programming. Thank you, Erin. And yeah, I hope if you were all able to take away from this workshop. I learned a lot, certainly, and yeah, and please fill out the survey. It'll be very helpful to us. And
And you'll get $25.
and the 20 you will get the $25.
And yeah, feel free to reach out if you have any questions that you want to ask separately or like any places that you think this be beneficial. That'd be great. Thank you so much.